Alrighty, here we go. It's the Travis Neville Podcast. My name is Travis Neville, and I'm pretty excited. I got some stickers. Check that out. If you want some of those, hit me up on Facebook. I will send you some. Props to the Flint City T-shirt company for making these great stickers, designing them from my logo. And also, I got T-shirts. I'm actually wearing one right now. Blazing the USA in the front, and in the back we've got the podcast logo, which is pretty cool. They're not your typical boxy ass, unisex T-shirts. They're fitted nice, and they are a little more modern than your typical, square ass T-shirt. So, anyway, if you want one of those, same thing. Let me know. I ordered a couple dozen just to test them out, so I'll give those away, no problem. Eventually, I'll set up an online store so you can just order stuff that way, and hoping to get a little more swag going, get some stuff with the book logo and all that. Anyway, I'm Travis Neville. This is the Travis Neville Podcast. I think we're at episode 27. Sorry about the delay, but I'm going to make some excuses. It was the 4th of July over the weekend, and man, I was up north with my family, enjoying the shit out of them. Relaxing, having fun, and it was awesome. We live in a great country. Proud to be here, although there's always shit that's not perfect. It's still the best place in the world to live. I'm convinced of that, and I'm proud to be here. I think about the sacrifices that people made to get us where we are, and the things you should think about on the 4th of July. What a great country. Some people took some big risks. One of the Declaration of Independence, it's interesting. Basically, everybody who signed that, specifically John Hancock, every one of these guys died broke. So they took a big-ass risk. Everybody's like, I remember in the movie Days of Confused, it was last day of school, 1976, right? So the bicentennial. And the kids are leaving school, and then this like liberal white woman yells out, "Don't forget, what you're really celebrating is a bunch of rich white men who didn't want to pay their taxes." Well, that's not how it ended up. I mean, all these guys got fucked by the British government. They probably, had at that time England and their colony, us, were so intertwined. Like if you were in business at all, you were in cahoots with them in some way. So those guys all got fucked. So anyway. They took quite a sacrifice for us. Thanks, guys. Here we are on our own for the most part, and some great people have made this country keep moving forward. To that end, I'm thinking about 4th of July. Where my place is up north, it's not far from Canada, and shit, where my home is down here, I'm only an hour from Canada. And so I talk often to people. I know people who live there, live in Canada, and especially right now, borders are still kind of wonky. They're not letting you in and out because of the coronavirus bullshit. So I'm talking to this girl, and she tells me that, hey, so Canada Day, all the celebrations and shit, and, some people still celebrate our Independence Day over there, especially if they live near the U.S., which most of them do, that I would know. All that stuff's been canceled, because of the residential schools thing. I'm like, what, like, you guys have, like, year-round school or something, and kids are staying there? What's going on? Like, I had no idea. So I did a little research, and if you haven't been privy to this new shit, evidently here's how it went down. Like the U.S., Canada, was settled by European countries. And when the European countries came over here, there were Native Americans, and I don't know what Canadians specifically call Native Americans. Don't forget Canada and Mexico, people from Uruguay. They're all still Americans because it's North and South America, right? So Native American, we're going to use that term for Indians, right? So we come over, European people, and manifest destiny. Destiny, especially in the U.S., we displace all these Indian tribes and go to war with them and all this shit. You guys know it was cultural. It was genocide, basically. And same shit happened in Canada. And we had in the U.S., I'm going to look it up because I forgot the name. There was a school, and so where it was basically almost every the Carlisle School. That's what it was. The Carlisle Indian Industrial School. Operated from 1879 to 1918. I'm pretty sure it was in Pennsylvania. What it was a place where Native American children were sent to be educated and learn how to succeed in the white world. And the idea behind that, now I think about it from the perspective of kind of the powers that be at that time. They didn't give a shit about it. They considered them savages or animals. So the whole idea was, let's exterminate them, get the fuck out of here so we can use this land and build our own country. They're in our way, right? And they're a threat, especially if you lived out in the frontier. I mean, Indian attacks were not uncommon at all. So that's how they were viewed. Now, there was a small minority of very liberal people who were like, well, if we're going to devastate these fuckers, we better at least give their children, or give them, any of them really, some tools to succeed in our country. Okay, and this is again in the U.S. So a lot of things happen, like the Carlisle Indian Industrial School, which has been much maligned since it was in operation. But remember, it closed over 100 years ago. The idea behind that was, hey, we're taking all your shit, but fuck, at least we're going to teach you some shit so that you can learn how to live in our world, which I'm behind that idea. You know, if you can't stop the progress of Europeans coming across the country, the least you can do is be like, hey, man, all right, here's the code to the Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? This is going to help you. So don't forget that these schools, although it was cultural genocide and we were just tearing apart their culture, you know what? Their culture was going to die. These schools were at least intended to, you know, if we're going to kill your culture, we'll at least help you succeed in ours. And that idea has actually been celebrated here in the U.S. Celebrated. And I'll tell you some examples. Number one, anyone want to bitch that if you're Native American, I think it's over 12%, you basically can go to college for free. At least here in Michigan, you can. So again, hey, we took all your shit, so at least you can learn how to succeed in our world. Nobody's bitching about that. Nobody's raising hell about that. It's a great idea. It's actually really cool. How about casinos? Nobody else. White people can't have casinos. That's Native Americans only. At least it was for a long time. I think gambling is legal now. Like the casinos in Detroit are not Native American. But before that, for a long time here in Michigan at least, you know, places in the UP, Odawa, stuff like that, they were Indian tribes. Like same thing. Like this is illegal for everybody else. But on the res, we're going to let you guys do this and make a shit ton of money, which should help your culture, you know, help you guys out. I know we fucked you. Here's some reparations, basically. We're going to give you an opportunity to make it for yourself in our world, which I think is a great idea. So, again, that being the standard today, we are looking back through the lens of 100 years later, looking at this Carlisle Indian School, where, again, Native American boys had to cut their hair off. They had to learn English. They weren't allowed to speak their native language in school, which, fuck. I remember having Spanish class. I couldn't speak English in there. You know, I didn't think they were raping my culture. I mean, it's a little different extreme. I get it. But why am I going into all this? Because, like I said, this residential schools thing that's going on in Canada right now, it's the same shit. It was a school set up, actually there were a bunch of them, where, again, Native American children would be, I'm not sure exactly how it was set up. I doubt that Canadians were ripping these kids away from their parents and sending them to the school. Maybe they were, I don't know. If that's the case, that sucks. But my guess is, what I know about the Native American culture is, they'd have gone and taken their kids back. And there's nothing out there about these residential schools saying that they're armed guards around them or anything like that. It was just a school, just like a school is today. So my guess is that they weren't tearing the kids away from their parents. The kids were just going there. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Anyway, so the kids go there again with the idea that, and again, it would have been liberals doing this. Hey, we're going to try to help you get a leg up in this society because we're taking away yours. And I've taken a long time to get to kind of this punchline, but the residential schools thing they're talking about right now in Canada is that they have recently found lots and lots of child remains buried on the grounds of these schools, where these schools used to be. And yeah, that's terrible. Nobody wants dead kids. Nobody wants dead anything, you know. However, I would tell you this. Again, this is late 1800s, early 1900s. There were diseases that were rampant. I mean, smallpox was super common. Lots of kids died who were white as well. Lots of adults died from diseases. The Spanish flu of 1918. How about that one? Everybody knows about that now because of the Rona. Lots of people died from that and probably were buried, in rural areas in unmarked graves or, a couple stones or something like that. And these children, they were from North America and they're getting exposed to these European diseases probably. And, they're getting stuffed into a room together with no, I don't know what kind of ventilation they had. And it was cold out in the winter and just spreading diseases. I mean, that's how schools work. Kids get sick all the time. And it isn't because they're kids. It's because they're with other kids. Standard. Anyway, so lots of them died, which, death rate was high back then. I don't know if it was unnaturally high, unnormally high for the Native Americans in Canada. I'm not sure. But they buried these kids on the school grounds. They set up a funeral, like a cemetery, and they buried them there. And, unmarked graves. I mean, I don't know how you could mark them. And again, it's 100 years ago. Maybe they marked them with wooden crosses and those things rotted years ago. I don't know. That's probably what happened. But I want you to think about this concept. They did the best they could with what they had. Now remember, like I said initially, the schools weren't necessary, right? It was a thing that white people did to try to be good to the Native Americans. It was essentially a positive act. Hey, we're going to help you to succeed. And you got sick and died here, well, fuck, we'll bury you. We'll give you a decent Christian burial, they would probably say. And probably that was for lack of white people just not knowing the Native American culture and how you're supposed to deal with the remains of a Native American. I don't know. But they did the best they could with what they had. I mean, it wasn't like, all right, your kid's sick. Let me shoot you a text here and let you know. Let me email you, tell you your kid's sick. This is 100 years ago. I mean, a lot of the parents of these children, again, as evidenced by the fact that they're at this school to begin with, probably did not have an address. They didn't live on roads. They lived in, I'm not shitting you, teepees and villages and shit like that. So how are you going to get word to them? I mean, how are you going to let them know that their kid's sick and or died? What else can you do? I mean, you might not even find them. I mean, lots of Native American tribes here in the U.S. for sure, they move from season to season. They move often just because of war with other tribes. So finding them would have been pretty damn hard. I'm just guessing. Again, the idea right here, okay? You do the best you can with what you have. You do the best you can with what you have. And my guess is they did that. So Canada Day gets canceled, which is similar to our 4th of July. It celebrates Canada being united into one country. And instead of just being a bunch of colonies, it became its own country, kind of like what happened with us, a little bit different. They celebrate their confederation, they call it. Which is unification of individual shit. And all of that stuff is getting canceled due to this. And again, American fireworks, 4th of July fireworks are canceled due to this. And I just find that to be so ridiculously inappropriate. It's not, and I'm not picking sides here politically. Again, I'm just saying, you do the best you can with what you have. It's exactly like this. I drove a gasoline-powered vehicle today to the gym. Okay, I rode my motorcycle. It's warm. It's a nice day. Rode my motorcycle. Runs on gas. It sounds dope as shit. It's loud. It's rowdy. And I rode it home. Now, I'm doing the best I can with what I have. Like, let's make the argument. Oh, you could have electric something or other. Well, fuck, I could have driven my truck, which gets like 12 and a half miles to the gallon. I rode my motorcycle, which gets like 50 miles to the gallon. But you know what? It's a gasoline-powered vehicle. And in 100 years, maybe that's what the liberals will be screaming about. Is anyone who drove gasoline-powered vehicles is clearly a fucking asshole, and therefore their whole family should be shamed forever. I took a big steam and dump this morning. It doesn't mean the rest of my day is garbage because of that. I'm doing the best I can with what I have. My guess is you are too. All right? There are a million mistakes you can make. Most of them you're not making. You finish out your life. You can look back and be happy that you did the best you could with what you had. And that's that. It would be a shame if, again, in 50 years or 100 years, the liberals grabbed a hold of things that you did just like everybody else did and didn't have any negative thoughts about it and came down on you because of that, or shamed your family socially because of shit that you did. Again, let's go back to the residential school thing in Canada. The schools at that time were not necessary. It was do-gooders, essentially, who set them up and ran them. Teachers, politicians who were sensitive to these situations, definitely in the minority at the time, as far as how the political climate was. Going out there and setting up schools, it's at the time, it was probably seen as exactly like going to Africa today and building water wells for different tribes. Right now you're saying, oh, well, that's not a bad thing. That's not cultural appropriation, blah, blah, blah. Well, you don't think that now, but maybe your liberal grandchildren will. I don't know. It just, what I'm telling you is it's inappropriate for one generation to look back several generations and go, you guys were fucking assholes. No one ever got up in the morning and said, I'm going to do bad things today. That's all I'm going to do. Everybody believes they're doing the right things for their life. They're doing the best things for them and those around them. You set a pace that you can work at every day, and you go home and you relax and you do what you do. You've got a typical day that you run. If you could maintain a higher pace, you probably would. Maybe you can maintain it for a little while, or boss is on you. You'll do that. But you are doing the best you can with what you have around you. And in 100 years, no one has the right to judge you for what you did or didn't do. It's the same shit going on here in Canada, and it just drives me nuts. People who aren't us, they're not even related to us, and their generations before us did some shit that I didn't give them permission to do. I didn't say, hey, this is what you should do. And they chose to do something else. That's not how it went down. They did the best they could with what they had. And now we are judging them with hindsight, which is 20 okay? Well, now it's 2021. See what I did there? So that's just inappropriate. It's exactly the same as being mad at yourself now and punishing yourself now. And here's where we make the transition into mental health, which I generally do. Getting mad at yourself now for mistakes that you made 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, I married the wrong woman. And I knew it before we got married. I knew it before we got engaged that it wasn't going to work. But I had other things in my life that were pushing me towards that. I had other needs that pushed me towards that. And so I don't begrudge myself that. I don't shame myself for that. I'm not going to not allow myself to be in relationships anymore because I made that bad decision way back then. It's just not inappropriate. See, what happens is this. I went through a bad situation. I didn't listen to my gut, and I let some other things kind of make these decisions for me. And you know what I did? I fucked up. And then I learned from that shit. And I won't do it again. You know what I mean? And how about have a little fucking grace for our culture and our society? We're not going to have a fucking Japanese internment camp again like we did in World War II. We're not going to set up the Carlisle Indian School like we did in, the turn of the century. Because we did that and a bunch of shit went bad, and so we fucking learned from it. And now we don't do that shit anymore. So have a little faith in that. Give yourself, your current self, a little bit of grace. Yeah, I fucked that up, but I won't do it again. Okay? I learned what I needed to learn from that, and now I'll move on. It doesn't mean that you take the rest of your life or the rest of your world and throw it on the trash heap. And that's, it's the same thing here in the U.S. with all the cancel culture bullshit. Abraham Lincoln did fucking amazing shit, and everybody says he's an asshole because fuck, the guy freed the slaves for fuck's sake. He was in the minority when he did that. He was super liberal and that's what he was trying to do. I mean, he had a lot of good strategic reasons for it, but the end result was he did a good thing. And everybody wants to talk about how he's an asshole. Robert E. Lee, yeah, he led the Confederation, led the Confederates against us in the Civil War. But man, was he a good man. Do some research on that guy. I mean, there isn't a church pew in the South. There isn't a church in the South that was from that era that doesn't have a little plaque that says, Robert E. Lee sat here. Because he went to all of them. He went to every one of them. He bounced around every Sunday. He was at a different church to get to know people. He knew that that's how he would get to know the people he was leading. That's how he knew he would learn what they want and they need. So, you know what I mean? I mean, granted, the guy was a war general, but having the support of the people is a big deal, especially in a war like that where you're kind of crawling across the country and you're a lot of times counting on the help of strangers, even if you're just crossing their hayfield. You know what I mean? You don't throw out the whole fucking shit just because of one mistake. That's what I'm telling you. Canada Day is a celebration of Canada. Canada's done lots of great shit. From fucking beer to Jim Carrey to Alex Trebek to Bryan Adams. I fucking love Bryan Adams. He's awesome. I loved him when I was a kid. I still like his music. Doesn't mean you chuck all that. You're shitting on your whole culture. You see what I'm kind of getting at here? There's this disgusting irony about that. There's this disgusting irony when you want to erase your current culture to atone for erasing past cultures. You're doing exactly what you should have learned not to do. When you go around tearing down statues and you go around canceling Dr. Seuss and shit like that, you're doing the exact fucking thing you're supposed to be ashamed of doing 100 years ago. It doesn't make any fucking sense. You see what I'm saying? I don't know. It drives me nuts. Yeah. So, yeah, one more thing. Yeah, this idea, I want you to keep it in your head. You can't get angry at the younger, dumber you for not knowing shit that the older, wiser you now knows. It's always going to be inappropriate. It's always going to not work. And the reason that the older, wiser you knows this shit is because you fucked it up when you were younger. You know? And I mean, yeah, cancel culture's bullshit. This whole thing, the residential schools thing, yeah, it sucks those kids died. It does. And it sucks that their culture was taken away from them. But the fucking schools didn't do that. The schools were there to try to help them make it in the new world. You know? Man, I used to tell kids that in my English class all the time. Hey, I was working in an inner city school district, and their grammar was different than the shit I was teaching them, and I've opened up with that. Hey, you guys can talk to your friends any way you want to. You can do anything you want, but I'm going to teach you how to kind of make it, kind of how to speak correctly, how to write correctly, how to organize your thoughts correctly, so that you'll be able to work for a white guy, essentially. And I told him that flat out. Like, most of your bosses probably are going to be white, so you better learn how to operate in that environment. And it really is no different than, I don't know, say you're a kid, you're a high school kid. I would tell them this too. You act a certain way around your grandparents, and you probably act totally different around your best friend. And then you act out of those two situations, you might act completely different with your parents. It's just the idea that there are different expectations in different circles of your life. And to have somebody to say to you, hey, this is what we expect in this circle, and I'll teach you how to do it. How is that ever a bad thing? So, and I would think about those teachers at those residential schools in Canada and the teachers at the Carlisle School in the U.S., and there are a few other ones in the U.S. that were like that, boarding schools. Those teachers were doing what they would have called God's work. They were working their asses off to help these kids. They weren't there because they hated Native Americans. Why the fuck would they work at a Native American school if that were the case? These were good people. They were doing the best they fucking could. And they were doing way more than most other people were doing. You can shit on that? It drives me nuts. So know that everybody out there is doing the best they can with what they have. Everybody is. Some people, sometimes they lose their shit and they get a little road rage. They don't do it all the time. I've watched it happen. Man, I've been driving so much lately. I'll watch a guy road rage the shit out on somebody or go flying past me, and then a little later I pass him. And I'd look at that and, well, that guy was pissed off for a while and he got it out of his system. And now he's back to Bill Bixby. You know what I mean? Everybody does that. You can't define a person by one mistake. Most mistakes. You know what I mean? Speaking of that, Bill Cosby just got out of jail. Did you hear that one? So I guess pudding pops are back on the menu. Yeah, that's all I'm trying to say. How does this residential schools thing connect to you and to my book? It's that simple concept. You can't forever beat yourself up for mistakes that you've made, because that will disallow you from moving forward. You know, I talk about that in the chapter about doing a home project. I talk about forgiveness significantly, and I talked about it in the Panic Attack podcast, where I talk about Russell Hassan and having a personal economy, an emotional economy. It's unhealthy. So, again, how you practice that outside of you is how you should be practicing it inside of you, and that's forgiveness and grace. People make mistakes. Man, I fucking make them all the time. Most of them are high profile. So, and I know you do too. And here's the thing. When you're dealing with yourself, there's this, you know, you could be caught in this trap of, you always know all of your own mistakes. And so then you judge yourself on those and you are ashamed of them. Nobody else knows every mistake you've ever made, but you do. And so then that could lead to that low self-esteem thing. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to hide all these things, and you know you make all these mistakes all the time, so you don't deserve a better life. And yeah, you do, because everybody you run into, you don't know all their mistakes, but they do. They know all their mistakes, and they're making it in this world, and you can too. Get your ass out there, kick some ass, forgive people, forgive yourself. That's the whole idea. As far as I'm concerned, this whole bullshit about the residential schools thing, yeah, it's a slap in the face to Canada. It's a slap in the face to all the people who busted their asses to work at those places. It's inappropriate. It's taking knowledge you know now and judging the shit out of shit somebody else did way back then where they didn't know that stuff yet. You know? You can't. It's easy. It's fish in a barrel, and therefore it's not a challenge. It's not worth your time. It's not good. It's not a good thing. So that's it. Residential schools, forgiving yourself, having a little bit of grace, moving forward in your life. If you want a sticker or a t-shirt, hit me up. I'm on Facebook. It's not hard to find me, Travis Neville. It's not a private account. It's not a locked account. You can get me on there. I'll add you as a friend. I get a few every week looking to, people I don't know that maybe want to check out what I'm doing. No problem. Go ahead and link in there. I'll send you a sticker. If you send me your email, I'll mail you a few. Or if you send me your address, I'll mail you a few. I'll pay for the postage myself. Glad to put them out there if you're enjoying the show. If you're close here in Michigan, like I said, I'll meet you. I'll bring you a t-shirt. I'll buy you a beer. We'll talk about the show. Talk about life. Let me know. We'll go from there. All right. I'm Travis Neville. This is the Travis Neville Podcast. I wrote this book called The Jossman Method. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on Audible. Any place fine books are sold, and a few places where shitty-ass books are sold. You can get it. And, I hope today's show has in some way helped you to think, and in some way, help you get your shit together. Have a great week.